Deep over southwestern Iran, it's 2:15 in the morning. An American S-15E Strike Eagle is flying low through the jagged canyons of the Zagros Mountains, trying to stay beneath radar. But down below, a mobile surface-to-air missile system spots them, locks on, and fires. The pilot instantly deploys flares to confuse the missile's heat-seeking sensors. The countermeasures trick the missile into missing a direct hit, but it still detonates close enough to the exhaust to trigger a catastrophic hydraulic failure. The jet starts falling out of the sky. With no control left, the two crew members pull their ejection handles. They are violently blasted out of the cockpit into the freezing, pitch-black air, drifting down onto hostile soil. Within hours, the pilot is located and safely extracted. But the second crew member, the Weapons Systems Officer, or WSO, who operates the targeting equipment, is blown miles away during the descent. He is now injured, alone, and stranded deep behind enemy lines. A stranded U.S. airman is a massive geopolitical liability. If the Iranian government captures him, they gain a high-value hostage, a bargaining chip to demand political concessions, and a severe psychological victory on the world stage. The local authorities know exactly what is at stake. Iranian state television immediately broadcasts the hunt, offering a cash bounty equivalent to thousands of dollars. Local militias and government forces begin aggressively fanning out toward the crash site. Surviving this requires going against basic human instincts. Instead of hiding in the valleys or moving away from the terrain, the WSO hiked over 2 miles on an injured leg, scaling a 7,000-foot ridgeline. He climbed up because elevation blocks radio interference and keeps him away from the main search parties below. Once secured in a rocky crevice, he activated a small, encrypted beacon sewn into his gear. Instead of a continuous signal that enemy forces could track, he sent a single, heavily encrypted burst, a prearranged code word confirming he was alive. That single ping reached the Pentagon. The U.S. military was no longer conducting a massive, blind search. They had an exact grid coordinate. Now they just had to figure out how to get him out. Flying directly to that coordinate was tactical suicide. The mountain was actively swarming with enemy combatants and covered by air defense networks. Sending in slow-moving rescue helicopters would likely result in dozens of American casualties. To understand how they solved this, look at this map showing the crash site in the mountains and the surrounding flat lowlands. The CIA fed false intel claiming the airman was being smuggled out over land. The local militias swallowed the bait. Markers tracking Iranian forces abruptly reversed direction, speeding away from the mountains to chase a ghost in the lowlands. With the ground forces distracted, the U.S. launched an armada of 155 aircraft. This included specialized electronic warfare jets, like the EA-18G Growler, which flooded Iranian early warning systems with static, completely blinding their radar networks. Overwhelming physical force is useless if the enemy sees it coming. By manipulating the flow of information first, the military created an invisible corridor right through a sovereign nation's defenses. The U.S. military then took a brazen step. They flew large transport planes straight into Iran and landed them on an abandoned agricultural airstrip in the desert. They effectively built a temporary forward operating base right in the enemy's backyard to stage the final rescue. But the clock was ticking. Iranian commanders realized they had been tricked. Their convoys whipped around, racing back toward the mountain ridge where the injured WSO was hiding. U.S. Special Forces, Delta operators, and Navy SEALs arrived in tactical helicopters just ahead of the enemy. They rapidly set up a 360-degree defensive perimeter around the airmen, staring down the incoming militias. To hold that perimeter, they relied on heavy air cover. A-10 Warthogs loitering above the mountain laid down suppressing fire with their 30mm cannons, chewing up the terrain to keep advancing infantry at bay. The infantry was pinned, but enemy vehicle convoys were still accelerating up the mountain roads. To stop them, B-1 bombers dropped massive 2,000-pound munitions directly onto the access routes, blowing massive craters into the asphalt and physically blocking the vehicles from advancing. Through a combination of electronic blinding, relentless close air support, and precise ground control, the U.S. military carved a temporary, heavily fortified bubble of American territory right in the middle of Iran. Under the umbrella of continuous airstrikes, Special Forces grabbed the injured airman, loaded him into a helicopter, and lifted off, leaving the mountain behind. But when they arrived back at the temporary airstrip in the desert, disaster struck. The heavy C-130 transport planes, loaded with gear, had sunk deep into the wet sand. They were completely bogged down and physically could not take off. The Iranian military was closing in fast. The commanders instantly activated a contingency plan. They called in a fleet of lighter, faster aircraft that could land on the rough sand, quickly boarding the remaining personnel in rapid intervals. They couldn't pull the stuck planes out, and they couldn't leave advanced anti-aircraft tech behind for Iranian engineers to study. So to prevent that, they blew the heavy transport planes to smithereens, right there on the dark desert runway. A flawless plan rarely survives contact with the enemy. The success of this extraction relied entirely on commanders anticipating catastrophic failures and having a backup fleet of aircraft waiting in the wings to absorb the friction of war. The fast transports burned out of Iranian airspace, safely delivering the WSO and every single Special Forces operator to a medical facility in Kuwait. The U.S. military intentionally destroyed millions of dollars worth of their own helicopters and cargo planes in the desert sand to keep the technology secure. Yet, despite operating for nearly 48 hours in highly contested territory, they took exactly 0 American casualties. In 1980, an American rescue operation in the Iranian desert ended in a tragic collision, 8 lost lives and total mission failure. Decades later, the military executed an infinitely more complex extraction over that exact same terrain and brought everyone home. The message sent by this mission requires no translation. The United States will burn millions of dollars, deploy hundreds of aircraft, and move mountains to pull one single airman out of the dark.